On This Week in Enterprise Tech, Cheebert takes us back to WISPAPALOOZA to talk about RouterOS from Mikrotik. Plus, Curtis, Brian, and I talk about the latest domain gate or .org domain heist going on around the internet. The industry is in an uproar about that one. Plus, we have a great guest, Vince Jeffs from Pegasystems, who's going to take us through business process automation and intelligence, as well as real-time interaction management. You don't want to miss it. Twy it on the set.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Twy It, This Week in Enterprise Tech, episode 371, recorded December 13th, 2019. Psst, you want to buy a TLD? This episode of This Week in Enterprise Tech is brought to you by Taylor Store. Taylor Store makes high-quality dress shirts that are fully customizable by you. From the basic essentials to the most high-end details, Taylor Store has got you covered. Go to taylorstore.com/enterprise and use code enterprise and get up to 50% off your first dress shirt. And by Ring Central. With Ring Central, you'll get everything you need in one place for your business communication needs. Sign up for a free demo or request a quote today at ringcentral.com/enterprise. And by LastPass, a personal password manager and identity solution for businesses all in one. You only need one master password, and LastPass remembers the rest. Visit lastpass.com/twit to learn more. Welcome to Twy It, This Week in Enterprise Tech, the show that is dedicated to you, the enterprise professional, the IT pro, and that geek who just wants to know how this world is connected. I am your host, Louis Maresca, your guide through this big, giant world of the enterprise. But I definitely can't guide you by myself. I need to bring in the professionals, the experts in their field, starting with our very own Geek in Paradise and the director of the Advanced Network Computing Laboratory in Honolulu, Mr. Brian Shee. Cheebert, how are you, my friend? How are you gearing up for the holidays?
Actually, I've been trying to get all kinds of projects off the ground. In fact, I just had a tour of a still under construction building, our new life sciences building. One of the things that's changed is now our main circuit breakers, every single one of them are now monitored. So we'll be able to do a lot more monitoring and modeling of how much power laboratory buildings actually use, so we can predict as we integrate sustainables like our entire parking garage covered by PV.
Fantastic. Now, I actually heard through the social sphere that you might actually have a brand new Chariot of Fire that you just purchased. Is that right? You're gearing up for a long trip?
Indeed. Yeah. So I'm trading in my midlife crisis car, which is Tornado Red. It's a VW GTI that's getting turned in. And we're going to use that to help offset a new Subaru Outback XT for my darling wife.
Well, speaking of happy travelers, we have our very own Mr. Curtis Franklin, senior editor at Dark Reading. Now, Curtis, you've been busy this past month, traveling, dealing with the great winter of the East and the North there, attending different conferences. What else is cooking down there in the Sunshine State?
Well, having been to a bunch of conferences and traveled to the Great White North and experienced snow over the Thanksgiving holidays, I'm happy to say that we're staying put in Orlando for a while. And here in the swamp, things are good. So we're going to enjoy the balmy Florida winter and see if we can't get some writing done and a bunch of really interesting articles written between now and the end of the year, including one coming up, well, where Santa meets zero trust security.
Well, thanks, guys, for being here. Well, fellas, we have to get down to business because we have a jam-packed show for you today. Do you and your organization, maybe they're a nonprofit, maybe you have an organization that's a nonprofit, well, you probably have a .org domain, right? Well, the .org domain will soon mean less to you and your users and site visitors after the latest ICANN domain policy changes. We're going to get into that, and we're going to be calling it Domain Gate and how ICANN is actually affecting things. Plus, Cheebert is also going to take us back to WISPAPALOOZA to talk about RouterOS from Mikrotik. Now, I also bet that your organizations need to talk about business process automation and intelligence, maybe even real-time interaction management, and they don't even know it. Well, our guest, Vince Jeffs, Senior Director of Product Strategy of Pegasystems, is going to take us through all the larger organizations and how they're taking advantage of all of that, and how you and your organization can benefit as well. But like we always do, before we get into all that great goodness, we want to take you through last week's enterprise news. So let's go ahead and jump into this week's blips. Now, we all love useful libraries, right? Well, OpenSSL is definitely a useful library. It actually provides developers for years tools and resources for implementing SSL and TLS protocols easily. Now, as you know, websites and emails and instant messages applications, virtual private networks rely on SSL and TLS protocols for security and privacy of communication over the internet. Now, in fact, a good number of those actually rely on OpenSSL. Now, you might not remember, but 5 years ago, we reported here on Twite about the OpenSSL vulnerability dubbed Heartbleed. Now, Heartbleed was derived from the source of the vulnerability, which was a buggy implementation of the RFC 6520 Heartbeat extension, which actually is packed inside the SSL and TLS protocols for OpenSSL. Now, the Heartbleed vulnerability ended up weakening the security and effectiveness of TLS's SSL. Now, websites affected by Heartbleed allowed potential hackers to read their memory. And I'm not talking about crystal balls here. I'm talking about actual data. And that means that the encryption keys could be found by savvy cybercriminals and used to access data going over the pipe. Now, Google created a fix for Heartbleed. They wrote code that told the Heartbeat extension to ignore the Heartbeat request message that asks for more data than payloads need. Now, the discovery of the Heartbleed vulnerability created worldwide panic. Now, once the fixes were applied, idle hands started looking for the causes of the incident. Now, close scrutiny at the OpenSSL revealed that it was a widely popular library, but it was maintained solely by just 2 men with a shockingly low budget. Now, 5 years after the disclosure of Heartbleed vulnerability, it still exists in many servers and systems. Now, current versions of OpenSSL, of course, have been fixed. However, systems that didn't or couldn't upgrade to that patched version of OpenSSL are still affected by the vulnerability and open to the attack. Now, once the threat actor finds the vulnerable system by easily scanning the network, it's relatively simple to exploit the vulnerability. Now, if you're worried about your services on-premise or in the cloud and whether they're vulnerable or not, there are plenty of tools out there that can scan for you and tell you what's going on. Now, in this case, the best thing you can do is diagnose and update. But if you can't, at least look to some of the script solutions that can help reduce the attack surface and stop Heartbeat requests in their tracks.
Well, the operators of Trickbot have a new business model, selling Trickbot. The operators of the prolific Trickbot banking botnet have begun offering advanced persistent threat actors access to a sophisticated new attack toolset called Anchor for exploiting the networks of high-value targets that the malware previously has compromised. Researchers at security vendor SentinelOne's newly established Sentinel Labs recently spotted North Korea's notorious state-backed Lazarus Group using the toolset to deploy one of its own malware samples on the network of an Anchor victim. The discovery is significant because financially motivated crimeware operations like Trickbot so far mostly have operated completely separately from advanced persistent threat campaigns, especially state-backed ones that are typically more focused on data theft, surveillance, and other long-tailed activities. Trickbot's operators, who started in 2016 by using the malware to steal money from online banking accounts, have over the years morphed into a massive crimeware as a service operation. Trickbot itself has evolved from a tool for stealing bank account login information to a tool that can perform a variety of malicious functions, including delivering ransomware, banking trojans, and cryptominers. Sentinel Labs research suggests a working relationship between Lazarus Group members and some of the criminals behind Trickbot Anchor, which allows them to have a mutually beneficial financial relationship. APT groups are not the only focus, however. According to Sentinel Labs, the Anchor attack toolset is also being used in large-scale cyber heists and attacks on point-of-sale systems.
Well, 3D printing might be the answer to keep our aging Airforce flying. Well, we've all heard the joke about the $10,000 toilet seat. Well, in reality, that's driven by parts that have to fit exactly, handle combat G-forces, and not add to the radar cross-section of the aircraft, which too often becomes a custom-made part. Then to top it off, the Air Force has a fleet of aircraft that in many cases are older than the flight crews, with spare parts being stripped out of the boneyards in the desert. Well, those boneyards are running out of some of those specialized parts, and the U.S. Air Force says it has a backlog of part orders in the tens of thousands. Well, 3D printing is coming to the rescue, and some innovative contractors working with people like Will Roper, the Assistant Secretary of the Air Force for Acquisition Technology and Logistics, are turning musty, dusty old 2D drawings into 3D models that can be printed with the new crop of high-resolution 3D printers that can print anything from gaskets to airlines to toilet seats. I recently saw a program on the Science Channel about companies that strip out parts from the boneyards, and in this show, they highlighted a landing gear hydraulic piston that was no longer made. Well, in last year's predictions, I said we were going to start seeing spare parts printed closer to the need instead of the cost of shipping, warehousing, and inventory. With folks like HP getting ready to let their CMYK 3D printer out into the open market, we should someday soon be able to order a new car part already in the correct color that was printed at our local dealership.
Now, Apple is not happy. Their fancy architect and chip maker has left the company and started his own firm, and it looks to have poached even more important assets from Apple. Now, Gerard Williams III left Apple in February before starting Nuvia Incorporated. Now, it seems that Nuvia actually focuses more on processors for use in data centers. Now, it recently exited stealth mode and announced funding worth $53 million this past November. Now, I looked at the job listings, and they have a ton of new roles posted. So if you're in the market for a new job in the silicon industry, Nuvia might be a great find. Now, Apple is suing Williams for a breach of contract in August, saying he was barred in an intellectual property agreement from planning or engaging in any business activities that are, end quote, competitive with or directly related to Apple's business or products. Now, it does seem that Apple has forgotten about California's ban on non-compete agreements, but that's not going to stop them. In response to Williams accused Apple of the quote, stunning and disquieting invasion of privacy over its month or monitoring of his texts. In one message, Williams said that Apple would have no choice but to purchase his new company. Now, in Apple's theory, if one of Apple employees speaks to or texts another employee conveying criticisms of Apple's strategies or decisions, that discussion is itself a purportedly unlawful solicitation to leave Apple. Now, he said in his filings, this is all the information he has, and he doesn't agree. Now, while Apple's public-facing work is on mobile chips that wouldn't immediately appear to compete with Nuvia's server chips, Apple said its suit that it's considering designing or customizing servers and has researched and developed significant server-related technology to optimize performance of servers used in its own operations and development work. It just goes to show you, if a business relies on a single point of failure, it might just, well, fail you.
Well, if you're in retailing, you should get ready, because research shows that retail cyber attacks could go up by 20% this holiday season. A new analysis of threat data suggests retailers will experience a 20% increase in attempted cyber attacks this holiday season, according to VMware research arm Carbon Black. Commodity malware and ransomware will continue to account for a major portion of attack volumes, but often these attacks will be just a means to attain other, broader objectives. The analysis shows a surprisingly high proportion of retailers have already been impacted by recent cyber attacks. More than 7 in 10 organizations, or 73%, reported an increase in online attacks over the last year, and 40% said they had lost revenue in 2019 as the result of an attack. The good news is that retail CISOs are responding to the worsening threat environment. According to Carbon Black, more than half the retail CISOs it surveyed plan on increasing cybersecurity staff next year, and 4 in 10 expect their security budgets will increase by at least 10% compared to 2019.
Well, our friends at Google have added a nag feature to Google Chrome. Passwords are a fact of security life for more users, and Google has just announced a series of new password protections in its Chrome browser for all platforms. The first is an immediate alert if the credentials you enter on a website or app have been compromised. Based on the password checkup technology introduced in February, the feature is now part of the safe browsing enhancements announced on December 10th. Safe browsing also includes a list of known phishing sites, which Google says is updated every 30 minutes. And if the user is logged into their Google account while browsing, the suite also makes use of predictive phishing algorithms to warn of sites that may have slipped through the protecting net of the known phishing list. I might add that I've radically changed the way to set up passwords now because of LastPass, which happens to be a Twit advertiser, where I no longer hesitate to use random, long passwords that are also super complex. Perhaps with Chrome nagging me about old, forgotten passwords and LastPass making it easier for me to go to long, complex passwords, maybe, just maybe, my accounts have a chance after all.
Now, modern processors have secure regions of memory that hold secure data, and customers trust that their data is, well, secure in there, right? Well, what if I told you it can be attacked and a vulnerability can actually exploit them? Would you be surprised in today's climate? Probably not. Now, SGX, which stands for Software Guard Extensions, is used as a private region that uses hardware-based memory encryption to isolate sensitive computations and data from malicious processes that run with high privilege levels. By subtly increasing or decreasing the current voltage delivered to the CPU operations, known as overvolting and undervolting, a team of scientists have figured out how to introduce or induce SGX faults and leak the cryptographic keys, break integrity assurances, and potentially induce memory errors. Now, that could be used in other types of attacks as well. While the exploit requires the execution of privileged code, it doesn't rely on physical access to the machine. In fact, it raises the possibility of remote attacks here as well. Now, the researchers privately reported the vulnerability to Intel ahead of the publication. Now, in response, Intel has released a microcode update and a BIOS update that mitigates the attacks by locking the voltage to default settings. Now, if you or your organization is using Intel Core processors starting with Skylake onward and some platforms based on the Xeon E, you're going to need this update. Now, the vulnerability is tracked as CVE 2019-11157 and should be available soon from your respective computer makers near you as Intel SA 00289. Now, if you do nothing else for this year in the near future, do yourself a favor, update. Well, folks, that does it for the blips. Next up, the bites. But before we get there, we have to thank a really great sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and that's Tailor Store. Now, it's hard to find custom shirts that fit us. I know this because it's very hard for me, and that's why I'm really excited to have Tailor Store here on Twiat. Now, Tailor Store offers high-quality made-to-order dress shirts for both men and women that are fully customizable and tailored to your measurements. Now, they also offer a selection of pre-designed dress shirts, all with your unique fit to them. And you can grab them as they are, or you can customize to your needs using their design tool. Now, it's all in the details, and the Tailor Store, they have put all their effort into every little feature that completes their dress shirts. Now, it's that time of year, the holiday season, where people like to give high-quality gifts. I know I do. And in fact, I'm giving my friend, I hope he isn't listening here, a gift certificate to Tailor Store for Christmas. I'll tell you why, because not only does Tailor Store have endless combinations for you, but the experience of building what you want is a ton of fun. Now, you don't know your exact size? Well, they have an amazing app called Size Me that actually revolutionizes the measurement process using advanced technology and algorithms. Now, basically, you use your mobile device, you point it at yourself, and bam, they get the right size. I'm not kidding you. It literally is the right size. You no longer need a tape measure. I received my shirt, and it was a perfect fit. It took only a couple seconds to scan myself, and Tailor Store had my measurements in their system. The whole process is seamless and easy, and it really lets you focus on the fun part of the experience, which is actually customizing and choosing the styles you like. Now, as a 100% carbon neutral business, Tailor Store challenges the traditional fashion industry with its new way to purchase clothes. Now, ready-made garments and off-the-rack sizes have no place in the modern world. People are individuals, and Tailor Store embraces your individualism. They have virtually endless options to choose from, whether you want to customize your shirt with the sleeves, the collar, the cuff, the pocket, or you don't want a pocket, or maybe the back of the shirt, the back details, the bottom cut, the buttons, the button thread, and so much more. In fact, their newest feature is actually a hidden button down on your shirt collar. And they also have another one called Collar Curve, which actually effortlessly adapts to the curve of your shoulders. Kind of cool. Now, Tailor Store's perfect fit guarantee takes away the risk of your ordering. In fact, if your shirt does not fit as you'd like, they will remake it for free. Just snap 2 pictures of yourself wearing the shirt. They make the necessary adjustments and send you a new shirt promptly at no additional cost. And there are no returns, so that faulty shirt is actually yours to keep. You can give it away, give it to charity, whichever what you want. Now, the process is fun, and even after you order that shirt, they actually make that process, the post-ordering, fun as well. They actually send you updates and even photos of your shirt being made during that custom-made process. And it actually gets me more excited about seeing the process and getting that shirt later on. I really can't wait for my holiday shirts to come. Forget the tape measure and other hassles. Download their app and let their algorithm do the work for you to get your exact measurements to have perfectly fitting shirts in just seconds. Wherever you are, look and feel your very best in perfect fit clothes made only for you by Tailor Store. Go to tailorstore.com/enterprise and use code enterprise and get up to 50% off your first dress shirt with free shipping. That's tailorstore.com/enterprise with offer code enterprise. Experience the unrivaled fit and comfort of Tailor Store's hand-picked fabrics for yourself. Terms and conditions apply. And we thank Tailor Store for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Well, folks, it's now time for the bites. And today, before we end the year with another special treat, we have this special treat. Cheebert takes us back to WISPAPALOOZA to talk about RouterOS. Cheebert, take it away, my friend.
All right, I'm here with Daniel Roth, also of Baltic Networks, and we're going to start talking a little bit about the Mikrotik Cloud Core router and what kinds of really cool things it can do, because I keep getting told it's the kitchen sink.
Yes, that's right. So Mikrotik is a company that kind of started off as a software manufacturer making just straight RouterOS. Over the years, they've added more and more actual products, routing products, switching products, access point products to their line. And the great thing about it is that every single product that they make runs RouterOS. So everything from this tiny 10 gigabit switch that I know is very popular among home lab enthusiasts, all the way up to this big 10 gigabit, 8-port 10 gigabit router that has 72 cores for processing power in it. So cool. What we're showing off here is the CRS 328, which is one of their newer switches. I'm sorry, this is actually the CRS 326.
So it's a cloud router
switch. Yeah. So it has a total switching capacity of 320 gigabits per second. I'm sorry, that's a non-blocking throughput capacity of 320 gigabits per second. Total switching capacity of 640 gigabits per second. Routing doesn't do so well, but it's a fantastic switch. It has 2 40 gigabit ports on it, and the rest of these ports are all SFP plus 10 gigabit ports.
So we're talking about a very modular platform.
Yes.
So my understanding is RouterOS on a small platform to the big platform, it's all the same thing. So I can take configs and scale up and scale up and scale up. So for an enterprise, I don't have to redevelop configurations.
Right.
I can scale it to the need and keep my cost of ownership right in the sweet spot.
Exactly. So if you're starting off as a small company and you just have 5, 10, 15 employees, you can start off with something smaller. We don't have one of them in front of us, but they make what they call SOHO routers, small office, home office routers, that are very inexpensive, ranging from $50 to the Wi-Fi models at around $100. And as you scale more and more, and you need more VPN tunnels, you need more customers to connect up, you have to start getting different branch offices. You can start increasing your what routers are available to you, just by copying the configuration from one to another. It's very simple to do. You just type export and then you copy that and drag it in.
Now, here's one of the things. I used to work on the Interop trade show, and one of the engineers is very high on Mikrotik. He actually runs internet search for different conventions, and he actually parks Class B addresses on this. These things talk BGP.
Yes, I do. Absolutely. Yeah. So 1072s are very popular for BGP peers. Especially here in the WISP community. Also the 1036s, which is a 36 core processor, also very popular among some smaller WISPs. These guys talk BGP, BGP version 4 and version 6 for IPv6.
My propeller is spinning like crazy. I'm a total geek. I love this kind of things. So what about as I start migrating to an IPv6 environment? can I run dual stack? Can I
Absolutely.
run V6 6-4 and things like that?
Absolutely. So the Mikrotik supports IPv6. By default, it is disabled, so you just have to enable it. But at my home, I have a tiny little Hex S. It's a $50 router. It works great. I run IPv4 and IPv6 on it for all of my devices.
Fabulous. Daniel?
Yeah.
It's been awesome. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thanks, Brian. That was great. Now, we do want to get into another topic. This is very interesting because it's being called the Great.org heist. Now, ICANN is now under the gun for some recent policy changes that are actually affecting organizations around the world. Now, let's go through the quick history lesson here about ICANN and .orgs. Now, in 2003, as part of the deal with ICANN to ensure it could renew its control of the .com registry, VeriSign agreed to give up .org. Now, a public bid and review ensued, that which was won by the Internet Society, or ISOC, a nonprofit dedicated to the open development, evolution, and use of the Internet for the benefits of all. Now, their winning bid was to actually stand up a new 501c3 to actually manage the domain, which they called the Public Interest Registry, or PIR. Put this in a little bit of perspective. .org domains are the third largest generic top-level domain of domain name systems on the internet. That's right. As many know, that .org is an open domain. Now, Public Interest Registry has always wanted people to view .org as a domain for communities and entities that serve the public good, but not always focused on nonprofit. However, a lot of nonprofits are gravitating towards these domains. Now, this is for good reason. In fact, a recent survey actually shows that .org sites were seen as more trustworthy than any other domain types. That's interesting. Now, people are more likely to turn to .org websites in a crisis, and even more so, they're more likely to post content on .org sites as well. Not only that, but people really trust information .org domains actually offer more than other domain types. Now, in the current climate, where people are actually trusting information they find on, not trusting information they find on the internet less and less, having .org domains felt a lot more comfortable and easier to trust for them. Now, here lies the reason for all the responses behind the latest news coming from ICANN. Now, the Internet Society announced that it has sold the rights to the .org registry for an undisclosed sum to a private equity company called Ethos Capital. Now, the deal is set to complete in the first quarter of next year, and no one really knows how this is going to affect the .org domains going forward. Now, the shock came entirely because the .org registry has always been operated, or hasn't always been operated as a nonprofit basis, but the org suffix, which belongs to 10 million organizations, has been synonymous with nonprofit organizations. Now, I want to bring my co-hosts in here because they have a unique perspective here. Chibert, I want to start with you because you work in education. You've worked with several organizations in the past, and moving the registry from to an actual for-profit group like Ethos, how do you think this will change the dynamic of the internet views and how people view the .org domains?
Okay, first and foremost, I got to go and make everybody aware. .edu is completely separate. This is only the .org world. And while I can't say who I talked to, I did go and start asking around, and various people that are involved with ICANN and ICANN-related organizations. And this was a board vote. This was not just one person. This was a board vote. And somehow or another, someone decided that this would be a good idea. Now, the general prediction is if you are running a .org, your fees for renewal are going to go up. Now, the prediction is it's not going to skyrocket, or at least that's the predictions I'm hearing. But when you start having a private equity company like Ethos, you kind of wonder whether or not those predictions are really true. And I truly wonder what the board was thinking and how the heck they decided this was a good idea to let a for-profit corporation like Ethos, especially when they only have a single, shall we say, a single entity that they own, why they're going to control org for nonprofits, makes you go,
It makes sense. I mean, it doesn't really really make sense to have a for-profit organization own this? I mean, like we were saying, even though it's not been known that nonprofits are using these .orgs, they are. I mean, they are using it. And in the same sense, we talked about a little bit of the trust side of things too. Curtis, I want to throw this to you. This brings a little bit of a question of business ethics, correct? I mean, it doesn't seem right that this company is not going to own the rights to all of this.
Well, I think one of the things that comes up is that with the proliferation of top-level domains, we've long since seen the era when you knew what kind of organization you were dealing with because of its TLD go by the wayside. Let's take an example. Remember when .net meant that you were dealing with a website or an email address that had been set up by a provider of some sort, whether it was an ISP or an organization providing a network of addresses for its members. Now we're seeing that apply to .org addresses. It's not going to be long before I suspect we'll see more erosion of even those EDU addresses that Brian was talking about. Top-level domains have become fungible pieces of intellectual property. Once dollars begin to become important, and more important really than clarity to potential users, then it's not going to be long before the only lack of confusion is over whether someone is going to profit by handing out those domains.
Right. It's interesting that you said that, because I actually saw a post, I think it was by Megan Maroney the other day on Twitter, that she posted an article about, I think there was a hitman put out on a guy because he wanted the domain handed over to them because how important the domain was for that point in time. It's just crazy to see the kind of the effects that these types of top level domains have on people and organizations. Gilbert, I want to throw this to you. You kind of touched on it a little bit, that originally this was a nonprofit business, and it now it's a for-profit organization. Is it more than just the price changes that are going to happen here, do you think?
I don't know. From a purely farcical point of view, maybe this means I can buy a .gov for my company. I'm starting to really and truly wonder what everybody's thinking. We're breaking a trust model is basically what's happening. And when I was talking to my ICANN source, he's definitely saying, we're going to see those renewal fees go up. And I really and truly think, when we have more top-level domains being scattered around and we're ignoring the original intents of those top-level domains, trust is totally out the window. And I'm really and truly wondering, as much as I deal with this kind of thing, how the heck did that vote manage to get by without a big public outcry? Tells me someone did a good job of hiding it or burying it in something else so that the great hue and cry of the internet wouldn't interfere with their vote and their profit margins.
Right. And the interesting thing here is they're not actually going back to look. I think that's the interesting part, is that, there's been a big uproar. There's been a bunch of petitions signed and people send it in, and people worry about their domains. Like, for instance, of current organizations that have .org already, if they let their domains kind of expire, then that leaves open for this company to pick up and resell them. And now there could be reselling them, or to maybe even to the highest bidder at this point. And not just for organizations or nonprofits or so on and so forth. So it brings up that question of what's going to happen in the future, and how is this for-profit kind of model and machine model going to happen? Well, how's it going to affect things, and how is it going to affect those organizations out there? So we'll definitely have to see as time goes on. We'll have to keep coverage on it. Well, folks, that does it for the bites. Next up, we actually get into my favorite part of the show. We get to actually bring a guest in to drop some knowledge on the Twilight Riot. But before we do, we have another great sponsor we have to thank for this week in Enterprise Tech, and that's RingCentral. Now, handling telecommunications in any organization it's not easy. In fact, it's one of those things that can sometimes prevent organizations from truly being productive. Now, I have been in the industry for over 20 years, and I can tell you it can become a crutch for any business and enterprise. Now, that's where RingCentral can step in and streamline it for an organization so you can focus more on your business and less on logistics. Now, with RingCentral, you get a total customer and employee engagement solution. Now, check out some of the features. You get a full cloud PBX system with flexible and powerful cloud voice on desktop or mobile with advanced administration and analytics. Now, this will literally streamline your collaboration and communication throughout your organization. Now, RingCentral also has team messaging. Now, this allows you to collaborate anytime, anywhere, on any one of your devices, video, file sharing, tasks, and more. You want to do remote video meetings? Well, you can host up to 200 participants with clear, reliable voice and HD video across devices. Now, if you want to handle inbound communications from customers with the contact center, you can have intelligent inbound call routing. In fact, CRM integrations and workforce optimization to actually drive that efficiency across your organization. Now, RingCentral also lets you enhance your digital engagement. It's a single platform to connect with your customers wherever they are online. Plus, you can engage current and future customers and turn any agent into an outbound blended powerhouse. It really is a one cloud communications platform. Now, it's open, so you can actually extend it using the APIs or out-of-box integrations. It's global because it's affordable. Guys actually have affordable PBX in 40-plus country phone numbers in 100-plus countries and service in 10-plus languages. Plus, it actually gives you insightful analytics with their intuitive dashboards, reports, notifications to actually drive better outcomes and productivity. And they add AI, which actually leverages RingCentral's data with powerful AI workflows to actually drive better decisions. RingCentral is the complete communication solution from one vendor, and it starts at low as $19.99 a month, saving you money and cutting your phone costs by at least 30%. Now, RingCentral also makes it easy to switch from your current provider. And in fact, RingCentral has customer service 24/7 via telephone, live chat, and email if you need them. Now, when I set up mine, it was super easy. I gave them my phone number I wanted to use for forwarding, set up the app, and bam, I was done. And when I actually was able to collaborate and communicate without worrying about all the details. Use RingCentral for all your communication needs. Sign up for a free demo or request a quote today at ringcentral.com/enterprise. That is ringcentral.com/enterprise. And we thank RingCentral for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Well, folks, it's my favorite part of the show. We get to bring in a guest to drop some knowledge on the Twilight Riot. And today we have Vince Jeffs, Senior Director of Product Strategy at Pegasystems. Vince, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Absolutely. Now, before we get into it, our audience does love to hear origin stories and people's journey through tech. Can you maybe take us through your journey and how you ended up at Pegasystems?
Sure, can do. I started actually quite a while back at a UPS. I have an undergraduate degree from Georgetown and a graduate degree from University of Maryland, where I studied operations research, statistics, and database systems. So I guess you could say data science, but they didn't call it that back then.
Right.
And I took a job with UPS and was with UPS for about 11 years doing essentially like business intelligence and operations systems. And then I went into their marketing department and started building out some marketing technology systems for them. And then I left there and went to a company called Rapp Collins, where we formed a group called the Marketing Technology Group, and we installed some of those kinds of systems in a lot of the big telecommunications, cruise lines, et cetera. And then I went to work for SAS, who definitely is in business intelligence and analytical systems, and worked there for a few years, and went to a company called Unica, where I was with Unica for 10 years, and I led product management. Unica got their start in predictive analytics software, but then took it into the marketing technology space. And then that led me, after Unica got bought by IBM, I stayed there for a few years, and that led me to Pegasystems, and I've been with Pega for about 5 years as the director of the product strategy for AI and decisioning.
Fantastic. Well, before we get into all of it, I know that I've worked in line of business applications, ERP, CRM for a really long time, and I can definitely tell you that when there's seamless integration and customers can use their data better, it definitely works a lot better. And Pegasystems seems to be kind of checking all the boxes there. But before we kind of get into all that, I did want to talk a little bit about just those magical words, which is digital transformation, and some of the challenges that organizations are seeing there today. Now, we know that a lot of organizations today, they have their own services, whether they're on-prem or online. They're consistently using them from different vendors all over the place. Are you seeing that these organizations are kind of hitting ceilings for how useful those services are because of data silos and other things?
I don't know if there's ceilings, but there's definitely challenges with sort of bringing all the pieces together, and there's organizational challenges too. I think in some ways the technology is ahead of the organization's abilities to absorb it and use it effectively. And I think that you probably hit on a point too, which is there are so many different technologies that they're trying to wire together. Just the complexities of that, I think, are, in some cases kind of overwhelming. So what I'm seeing with some companies that are being more effective is they're rationalizing that. Instead of using, like 50 different technologies, they're trying to consolidate it down, at least in terms of the major platforms, and sort of, building upon, 4 or 5 major platforms, and then, dealing with the rest sort of as a, hey, I can switch this particular technology in or out, but I can't switch this platform in or out. That's expensive.
Right. And so what you're saying is you're kind of seeing some lock-in from a platform perspective, and it probably adds more complexity to their kind of business processes and their integration and IT, right?
Yeah, I think it does. And I think that, some of the complexity is driven by just the sheer amount of data that's out there, and that they're trying to weave into these platforms and to use for decisioning. So as we know, that problem, if you will, is growing as we speak. It's just so much data from so many different devices and so many different customer sources and third-party sources that seems to be one of the biggest challenges, at least that we see.
Right, makes sense. In fact, I think last episode we had Seagate on. They were just telling us that we're in petabytes of data sometimes for organizations, and they just don't know how to handle their data. And it's true. It's a very difficult situation. Now, I do want to bring in kind of some of the challenges that organizations are seeing. Now, obviously, they're finding challenging issues in both IT and DevOps, security, privacy, data handling, and they have services that are hybrid or on-prem or in the cloud only. How about just a general question of where can organizations start, and where can they start to simplify their business processes here?
Yeah, I think what's important, and I think that's really key, is that they have to prioritize kind of where they start and why they start there. And the way that we advise people is look at things like your customer's journey. So, if you there's a lot of talk about empathy and AI and empathy and the way brands, act and bring services to their customers. And I think a lot of that has to do with them understanding better exactly how those customers are using their website, using their mobile app, not just transactionally, but for the entire journey that they're on, whether that's, they've bought a car and the entire journey is from the purchase, through to the, getting the vehicle, picking it up, using it, trading it in, all that stuff. So, in a bank, it's opening the account. It's the first 90 days of using that account. It's, adding additional products and services to that relationship. So I think that brands that really think about that entire customer journey and look for friction points, look for the places where customers are stumbling or customers are struggling or customers are unhappy, and then prioritizing those into what we call micro journeys. So think about those micro journeys, think about the better outcome you can get in that micro journey and start there. And quite frankly, a lot of times you can make headway in 90 to 120 days if you, sort of focus the problem in a little bit.
Makes sense. No, I think that is a challenge because a lot of organizations, they don't know where to start. And I think another thing is they hear a lot of different terms that are kind of in the wild there. And now, Like I said, I've been in the industry for a long time, and in fact, I'm aware of Pegasystems. They've been around for a while, and in fact, before the show, I've actually watched some videos and some keynotes, and I hear a lot of the buzzwords, industry terms, and maybe you can kind of go through some of them and how they apply to some of the organizations. Like, for instance, we hear business process intelligence. Like, what does that mean? And of course, real-time interaction management. What does also that mean? So maybe you can kind of go through those and how they apply to each individual organization.
Yeah, you picked out two great ones because those are two that we really focus on, and it relates to that customer journey also, because the way we think about it is we think about organizations that are really trying to earnestly do some digital transformation. And when you look at that, I think you look at two kinds of firms. You look at firms that are digitally native, that honestly get that stuff and it's sort of in their DNA. And then you look at, let's just call them, for, lack of a better term, legacy firms that have been around for a while, have a lot of legacy systems, probably have mainframe systems, and really are the ones that need to digitally transform or, kind of remodel their house, if you will. And when they do that, they have to do things in both of those areas. They have to make better decisions on behalf of their customers. So that's some of the digital transformation. And that's where real-time interaction management comes in, because they need, honestly, they can't afford to have 10 or 15 different brains making those decisions for those customers, because they're going to conflict with each other. If you have a brain in your mobile app that's making decisions there and isn't aware of the decisions you're making on your mobile site or in your store, your branch, you're going to make confusing decisions on behalf of the customer. So real-time interaction management is all about making those decisions in the moment. So, when a customer comes in channel, you need to call one brain. That brain should be the decision-making authority, if you will, for the organization. And it should be thinking about things like, what's the next best action? What's the next best conversation that we should have with this customer, given their current context, given their intent, given the journey they're on or the stage they're in that journey. And then the second part that you hit on first is the digital, process automation, if you will, the, what some used to call, BPM, business process management. But what that really is it's doing the back office tasks and the hard work then to fulfill on those promises. Because if you have an interaction with a customer and part of that is an offer you make, and that offer is, to open a checking account, for instance, and, over the course of the next 60 days, you're going to, have certain additional promises that you're going to fulfill to that customer. Maybe when they make a direct deposit, you give them an extra $100 or whatever it is. All those promises that you have to fulfill, you have to have good workflow and good case management to get that work done. And so that's what we call, the digital process automation part of it, because you want some of that to be automated. You don't want all that to be labor intensive and have to have a bunch of humans running around trying to fulfill all that in the background.
Right. So I think the interesting thing here is you guys have quite a list of S400, even some bigger companies out there, customers that you work with, like, for instance, Robobank or Vodafone or SiriusXM, PayPal, Cisco. And I can imagine that pretty much all of these companies probably had systems in place in the past, but they kind of wanted to optimize their workflows, business processes. Now, maybe for the sake of our audience, some of the smaller organizations out there, can you maybe take us through how some of these organizations are taking advantage of Pegasystems?
Sure. So, the way that they're taking advantage of this is through what we call sort of building for change. So what we mean by that is and this is, you mentioned there's a lot of sort of those fancy terms out there. We do believe that we do help with the future proofing. And because what we do is our software is pretty agile. So as your business changes and you've got changes that you need to make to the way that you're handling these processes or the decisions you're making or the strategies that you're using, you don't have a lot of heavy lifting in terms of having to move that stuff from a design to a dev to a test to a prod. And, that's what causes angst for organizations. I've seen it because I was a consultant for 20 years with some of these, huge enterprises, and they just spend inordinate amounts of time trying to change things once they have a decent system in place. And if that system is old and creaky, quite frankly, and it costs $1 million for IT to do anything, then that just the business can't operate. The business can't, be market agile. So that's what we do is we try to show them how, with our software and with using agile methodologies and DevOps, as you mentioned, and what we call revision management, we can get a lot of these changes and adjustments into production in literally hours, days certainly. So some of these big brands like GM and Verizon, as you mentioned, Commonwealth Bank of Australia, are making changes to their platform, decisions that they're making, strategies that they're using on sometimes a daily or even intraday basis.
Makes sense. Well, we have lots more to talk about here. And when we come back, I do want to get in a little bit about the digital transformations and maybe the digital revolution of how people are using different processing and maybe even AI in their processes and workflows. But before we do, we have to thank a really great sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and that is LastPass. Now, people have their favorite tool, and that basically saves them time and money, and mine is definitely LastPass. I love LastPass. I use it every day. I use it so often, I don't even know I'm using it anymore. It's one of my favorite tools. Now, think about it. You have a username and password for every site you go to, every site, especially the ones you find most important to you, like your financial sites, your business sites, your social networks, your emails, you name it. Now, for me, it's 5 different banks, and I'm supposed to, remember a username and password for each different one for each one of those sites, right? Well, it becomes impossible to remember and manage, and you don't want to write those passwords down on sticky notes because people are going to find them, right? Plus, you're going to lose them, and you don't want to store them in plain text on your desktop or on your email because that's just a bad idea. Well, that's where LastPass comes in and saves us all. LastPass automatically remembers and fills your passwords anytime, anywhere, whether you're on a computer or a mobile device. All you have to do is remember that master password, and LastPass remembers the rest. Now, I got hooked on it when I started using it on my desktop, but it's definitely super useful on all my devices. Every one of them, even browser add-ins that make it easier for web logins, whether it's Chrome, Edge, Firefox, Opera, and more. Plus, it's great, works on Android and iOS, and it just kind of adds peace of mind because your data is encrypted and decrypted at the device level. So that means the data is stored in the vault and it's kept secret even from LastPass. So, you can feel really good about where your data is going. Now, it's recently that where I had a medical bill, I actually had to pay, and I had to visit a site that I hadn't visited in a long time. And I couldn't actually remember the email address that I used for the account. Well, my family needed the password to pay that bill. Did I remember it? Of course I didn't. So what I did was visit the LastPass vault and use my one and only master password, and bam, I could give them the password. They were able to pay the bill. It literally saved me time and money. Now, I'm talking about my personal use account, but they also have LastPass families as well as they have some amazing enterprise offerings as well. LastPass is an award-winning security solution that helps millions of individuals and over 58,000 organizations navigate their online lives easily and securely. Now, businesses can maximize their productivity while still maintaining effortless, strong security with LastPass. Now, LastPass recently set up an expanded business lineup with some amazing features. They have authentication solutions where you can understand your user's behavior. Authentication will adapt based on each individual. They have access solutions where they have management and control for user access for all access points in your organization. They have identity solutions where they offer simple integrated views across all access and authentication tasks and who, what, when, and where are actually accessing them. Not to mention password management to securely manage every password in your business because it's the 21st century, right? Spreadsheets and sticky notes are no longer going to cut it for you and for your organization. Now, instantly add and remove team members, safely share those passwords, and I'll tell you one thing, also store other digital records, Wi-Fi logins, software licenses, employee IDs, passports, and more. Plus, get this, raise some eyebrows for some of the IT admins out there. There's now Active Directory integration, and that means that you really only have to remember that one single password, your AD1, and you still have access to your vault. It's really easy. For me, it just makes it so I don't really have to remember that single password and I get access to everything. Honestly, I love this tool. I need LastPass. I will use LastPass forever. I'm a user for life. Now, Twit uses LastPass Enterprise, and we are all excited about some of the new products that are coming out. LastPass also has an expanded business lineup with some amazing features that will improve security across your company and make life easier for users. Visit LastPass.com/twit to find out how they can help you. That's LastPass.com/twit. And we thank LastPass for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Well, folks, we've been talking with Vince Jess and about Pegasystems and all about digital transformation and how people are actually dealing with that, and organizations are dealing with that. Vince, I did want to throw it back to you and ask you a little bit about how some of the solutions are coming out of Pegasystems, because I see a lot of things. Like I see CRM solutions, I see customer-facing, business-facing solutions. What's the barrier here? Where is Pegasystems kind of sit? Like, because a lot of people already have some of those systems in place, like Salesforce or whatnot. What is the advantage of having all in one box, I guess you could say?
Yeah, I mean, we recognize that there, particularly with the engagement channels. So, and I think that companies like Adobe, Salesforce, Oracle, et cetera, are absolutely going to be tooling that many enterprises are going to use for their email, for their websites, et cetera. But what we believe that Pegasystems is and does very well is we can sit back in the background and orchestrate a lot of that work, and make, again, when we talk about real-time interaction management, be the one brain for that organization to make really good decisions about each customer, and make those with AI involved, because quite frankly, you can't program just rules. You need good learning systems that are going to make good predictive decisions about what customers might do, what they intend to do, and then use those to power the recommendations going into your websites, going into your agent-assisted channels. So, if you've got a call center, those people need help. There's a lot of pressure on them to handle a lot of customers and a lot of complexity with all of the, all the products and services out there in banking and healthcare and insurance that are growing in complexity also. So those people need help, and they need assistance, and they need the AI to be making recommendations to them on how to service customers and how to, engage better with customers. So that's where we feel we fit in really well.
Makes sense. Now, we hear a lot about kind of organizations looking to build new applications because they have specific needs throughout their organization, whether it be customer-facing and or internal-facing applications. And we hear a lot about these kind of low-code solutions. What is Pegasystems offering here to kind of make sure that barrier entry is really low for organizations?
Yeah, that's a really important area for us, so Pega, if you've sort of dug into Pega at all, you'll know that Pega is a model-driven platform. So everything is there, from the ability to build great UI, and we've put a lot of time and energy into design thinking and having UIs that can be built very quickly and with no code, essentially. And so you can build applications in what we call directly capturing objectives. So in other words, a Pega person would sit, or a Pega consultant would sit side by side with the business, and they'd define the requirements, and they'd build that system directly in the tool and come up with an immediate application, not a prototype, not something that is just a mock-up, but literally an application, because underneath the covers is all the things that you need to actually build that application quickly. You've got the data, you've got access to all the classes of customer and product and and actions that you're going to take. So you put all that together very, very quickly into an application if you need to customize something. Or what we try to urge companies to do is look very carefully at the pre-built stuff that we have in particular that, as you mentioned, is already pre-packaged using that same model-driven environment for sales, customer service, marketing purposes in the CRM area, for KYC and financial services, CLM, for credit risk decisioning. So we've got a lot of different applications that we've built, and we've put an opinion in that we think is, based on best practices that we've seen over the, 30 plus years we've been doing this, which can really help jumpstart organizations from having to build things from scratch.
So I do want to bring my co-host back in because obviously they have amazing perspectives here. And Kirst, I want to throw it to you first because I want to get your enterprise perspective here. What do you think organizations here are going to be using this for? What different parts of the different organizations will be using this?
Well, one of the questions that I have is whether Pega is seeing their customers growing from within the key or the core enterprise IT software development group, or whether with the low and no code models, you're seeing more business units become active in developing the apps. Have you noticed, a shift away from the centralized enterprise development group at all?
Absolutely. And I think it's a good thing because, again, as a consultant for 20 years doing that, I saw that unfortunately that chasm that really existed between the business and IT. And I think there are plenty of things in this day and age, as you guys well know, in the topics you cover, for the professional experts in IT to do. They've got their hands full, quite frankly, and I think they want to be partners in making the business successful. They want to be innovative. They want their business that they do work for to be innovative. In order to do that, you've got to put more of the control in the hands of the business. And so, yes, we're definitely seeing that happen. And with platforms like Pega, I think we help enable that. Now, I don't want to make this sound like it's utopia because it's not. I mean, there's still lots of hard work and wiring that needs to be done, but it's more of the business is getting directly involved in that, expressing things directly without these different layers that exist where they throw requirements over walls and walls and walls and things just come out the other end not useful for the business.
Fantastic. I do want to throw this over to Brian because I know, Brian, you work in the networking industry and in a lot of different industries. I want to throw it to you to get your perspective here.
Well, I've been sitting back listening. This is sounding like you guys are predicting a fairly good-sized paradigm shift in how we deal with the data and how we deal with things that are customer-facing. So I'm going to ask the crystal ball question. Where do you think we're going? Where's the rudder steering us in this world of data lakes, data oceans? How are we going to start dealing with all this deluge of data?
Yeah, it's a great question. And what I see is I think that we're getting away with the fact that the cost of storing data has come down and it continues to come down, kind of according to Moore's law. But all that means is that we just keep stashing more data away and we're not necessarily using it very well. And so I think where it gets better, and we're seeing this, is the real-time system. So the systems that can use the data immediately, glean insights from it immediately and make decisions on it immediately. And then quite frankly, very often, you don't need to store the raw data. You may store some summarization of that for some historical reporting purposes, but the half-life of data is fairly short in most organizations. The usefulness of that data for predicting things is, 90 days maybe, at best. And often a lot less, often weeks or days. So what we're seeing is that there are technologies out there now that are streaming that data and making these decisions very quickly and then not stashing that data away at that, raw or unstructured level where it is so expensive and so, voluminous.
Well, Vince, thank you so much for being here. Unfortunately, we're running a little bit low on time, and I did want to give you a chance to maybe tell the folks at home where they should learn more about Pegasystems, maybe how they can get started and take advantage of all that it has to offer.
Sure. Thanks, Lou. You can go to www.pega.com. And then if you just go to products there, you can go look at some of our major solutions that we've talked about today. You can see our CRM applications and some of our AI-powered decisioning, our sales automation, our customer decision hub that we talked about, and then some of our case management capabilities. So I would encourage people to go there, check out what we're doing in the AI and customer decisioning space. It's pretty exciting. And I thank you guys for having me on today.
Well, folks, you've done it again. You sat through another hour of the Best Dang Enterprise podcast in the universe, according to 9 out of 10 auction.org domains. But I want to thank everyone who makes this show possible, especially to my co-host in crime, starting with our very own Mr. Curtis Franklin. Curtis, people love reading your stuff. Can you maybe tell the folks at home where they can find you and all of your work?
Well, as always, you can find my work at darkreading.com, especially in The Edge at darkreading.com. And I've got four big pieces I'm working on that'll go live between now and the end of the year. They range from the Santa in the Land of Zero Trust Security piece that I was talking about to pieces on things like best practices for API security. You know, we cover both very hard-hitting and somewhat more, well, let's just call it thought-provoking pieces there at the edge of Dark Reading. Come on over, check them out. And as always, I'll let you know when one of my pieces is up by tweeting about it from KG4GWA at Twitter.
Thanks for being here, Kurt. Of course, we have to thank our very own geek in paradise, Mr. Brian Cheech-Ebert. We have a prediction show coming up and the best of show, but how can other people get in touch with you about, maybe share their thoughts about different shows and different topics for future shows?
Well, I'm on Twitter, and I'm ADVNETLAB, Advanced Net Lab. I'd love to hear from you. Or drop me an email. I'm Cheebert at twit.tv, or better yet, use Twite at twit.tv, and it hits all the hosts. We'd love to hear from you. We've actually been answering some interesting tech support questions, people asking about things we've covered in the past and whether it would be appropriate for their small business. You know, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear about topics you'd like us to cover. And who knows, maybe we'll be able to book a guest on a topic that you want. You know, maybe I should go see if I can go and buy bsa.org. I wouldn't mind being the Boy Scouts of America. You know,
you are a Boy Scout, Cheebert. Thanks, man.
Yeah, you know, it's a horrible thought, but you know, I just gotta wonder.
Thanks, Cheebert. Thanks, guys, for being here. We also want to thank you as well. You're the person who drops in each and every week to watch and to listen to our show and to get your enterprise goodness for the week. We want to make it easy for you to watch and listen and get your enterprise news. Go to show page right now, twit.tv/Twilight. There you'll find all the amazing back episodes, all the show notes, co-host information, guest information, of course, all the video, all the stories that we do during the show and links to those stories. But more importantly, next to those videos, you get those helpful download and subscribe links as well. Support the show by getting your audio version, your video version, your HD video version of your choice. Listen in on any one of your devices and on any one of your podcast applications as well. It's really the best way to stay on top of your enterprise and IT news. So go ahead and subscribe. Now, after you subscribe, you can impress your friends and family members and coworkers with sharing Twilight with them. And remember, we have the best of show coming up, as well as our prediction show. So during the holiday break, give the gift of Twilight. Now, if you already subscribed and you are available during the days on 1:30 p.m. Pacific on Fridays, we actually do the show live. So come check out the show live at live.twit.tv. There we can show you all the behind the scenes and what we do during the show, as well as also if you're going to watch the show live, you might as well jump in our chat room live as well, irc.twit.tv. There we really love the chat room. They have some great characters in there. They give us some great show content during the show, and sometimes they actually change the show's direction based off of the discussions we have in there. So if you're going to watch the show live, you might as well jump into the chat room as well. Also, if you can't watch the show live, and you can't be part of the discussion live, we still want to be part of we still want you to be part of our amazing community. Come join the 24/7 discussion on our all new community location at twit.community. All the hosts are out there. The Twitch community has some great discussions about show content, hosts, guests, and discussions just about everyday technology. So come on over there and have some great discussions as well. Twit.community. Remember, you can always follow me at twitter.com/LouMM. There I actually post my holiday gripes, my enterprise tidbits, and of course conversations with good people like you, of course. Plus, you can also see what I do during my normal work week at Microsoft if you go to dev.office.com. There we post all the amazing and great ways to customize your Office experience to actually enable you and your Office, your team, to actually make Office more productive for you. I also want to thank everyone who makes this show possible, especially to Leo and Lisa. They continue to support us each and every week to do This Week in Enterprise Tech, and we couldn't do the show without them. Also, I want to thank everyone at TWIT as well, especially the engineers. And also, I want to thank Mr. Brian Chi one more time because he is not only our co-host in crime, but he's also our tireless producer. He does all the bookings, the plannings for the show, and we really couldn't do this show without him. So thanks so much, Cheebert. And of course, before we sign out, we have to thank our TD for today, Victor. Victor, in the spirit of tradition and this holiday season, what was the main theme of today's show?
Well, just like tradition, I spend the whole show trying to figure out what Cheebert is hinting at in his intro. So when he talked about a parking garage, I think they should name that parking garage after Cheebert.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Well, I would say very close, but it would be just never trust.org. But good try. Thanks for playing, Victor. Maybe next time, maybe next year. Happy holidays, my friend.
You too.
All right. And until next time, I'm Louis Maresca, just reminding you, if you want to know what's going on in the enterprise, just keep quiet.